IDW Sonic, issue 60. It starts with Tangle having already fallen from quite a dangerous height, and she says there's nothing to grab. She falls through a floor, disappears into it, but then a second later we see her above it facing upright with her tail below her this time. How did she get flung upwards above the floor? How did she correct her position to be upright? I guess Metal Sonic hit her upwards. He hits the floor and she runs away from the things that captured Whisper. It's confusing art to have it look like she's hovering away from him like how he hovers. Because both her feet are off the ground and she's leaning forwards when she can't fly. Sonic characters have magic all the time, so it's not like it's impossible, but if she doesn't ever hover like Metal Sonic again, then it's definitely gonna be stupid. She hides under the floor. I assume Metal Sonic left because she comes out of it, and she says he's gone. I'm just wondering why she's able to run on the floor when she's supposed to be intangible to everything. Is it because of what the floor is made of, and because the effect is already wearing off? Good thing for her so she doesn't fall to the core of the earth. She wastes some panels reiterating what we know about what she wants to do and wondering if she'll fail. At least she can show a full range of emotions, and come off like a real person as a result. She'd be boring and uninteresting if she was always in the excited for adventure mode that I picture her as being in. She sees smoke and decides to follow it, and Silver naturally points out that his team will win if they go to Eggman because they're together, and they know where Eggman is because of the tablet. I doubt the tablet literally knows where he is at all times. That'd require a tracking device in him. So it's only an assumption that he's in a specific room. He could be in the bathroom or the kitchen instead. But that'd be close to it anyways, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, they'd definitely be guaranteed to win if Silver was with Sonic. Rouge says their best bet is to rescue Shadow and Omega. Tangle pops up from the floor, and Amy gets so startled that she screams and tries to hit her with a hammer, even though she wouldn't be in the habit of seeing any friend of hers as a threat on sight. I'm not really sure that this is in character for her. She fortunately apologizes as she's fine and says it was all reflexes. Tangle explains things, and Sonic sees the thing that trapped Whisper, and he grabs Metal Sonic's hands instead of attacking him. But the thing useful about that to justify it is that he'd be holding him still to protect his friends. Now telekinesis him apart, Silver. Really smack him into the ground. Tangle has the time to complain that Metal Sonic let her lead him to Sonic, a sentence that's fortunately there to justify why he didn't instantly catch up to Tangle. And she also has time to warn Silver not to let these traps get close. You'd think in all those seconds Silver would have used psychokinesis on Metal Sonic, since it takes a split second, and if he was such a coward that he was taking a while to get the nerve to do that, he wouldn't look determined or even be here. So the only explanation for him standing still as a statue is that he was too stupid to think to use psychokinesis yet. Blaze has to use her fire magic to save him from the traps for a bit. And then Silver puts a psychokinesis field on the traps. Now they better not be a threat after this point, because there'd be no excuse for him not smacking them into the floor until they're destroyed at the very least. They aren't a threat in the next page, so since he's done dealing with them, I'm still wondering why he doesn't grab Metal Sonic telekinetically. Silver's just a story ruiner when he's faced with a threat that's supposed to last more than a panel. And he didn't have to be in the city, so there's no excuse for his presence ruining the writing. Amy hits the floor with her hammer, breaking the floor beneath Metal Sonic to send him falling with stuff above him falling down onto him with a crash sound, which properly justifies him not being a threat right after this. It's novel that Amy gets to be the one to beat Metal Sonic. It's great that she finally gets revenge for when he kidnapped her, and it's sweet of Rouge to compliment her on hitting Metal Sonic. Then Blaze, Rouge, and Silver end up looking for Shadow in a separate team, Blaze using a fireball to light up the way and see the damage to Omega, who's conveniently still able to talk. They get faced with giant robots with a giant big emerald in front of them that has Shadow unconscious near it, conveniently still not woken up yet. And some Shadow androids look at Rouge menacingly. They wouldn't still be threats if Shadow had been smart enough to use Chaos Control to warp them apart, instead of merely freezing time and then attacking them like a normal person and hoping that would kill fireproof robots. These characters would be completely screwed if these weren't such stupid robots that they literally do nothing but stand there. Someone holds some cut wires close to each other to get electricity going between them, and Tails says he's got it. Amy goes over the plan, saying that they're in the control room and Tails is supposed to disable Eggman's safeguards for the fake Emerald power grid to crash the system and stop the city's growth, and let them rescue their friends. They hear noise, and Tails assumes something's wrong with the cable system, and Metal Sonic cuts the rope above Tangle. Tails flies carrying Sonic and Amy, and thanks to Metal Sonic, Tangle and Sonic end up falling, with Tangle having her tail around Metal to keep him from being a threat. Metal must be hovering like usual, and that slows down his fall and Tangles his fall since she's wrapped around him. While Sonic bounced off the walls below him to justify the fall being harmless to him, and thanks her. And I'll have to assume that Tails flies downwards to catch up with them while holding Amy, so it's not like Amy's gonna take a fall. So at least this time I won't be wondering how a character survived a dangerous fall with no injuries. There's like how many different characters in the series by now that weren't even injured from a huge fall? There's Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, and even Tangle, along with Belle and a random kid earlier. So it's definitely not exclusive to magical, cosmically important characters. Even Eggman survived huge falls in Sonic Boom, like in the Haunted Lair. It's almost like Sonic characters in general are immune to fall damage, with Zachary being literally the only exception. It turns out Omega is conveniently still able to stand up, and even fire his weapons. Blaze says it's overpowering as she's in front of a fake emerald, and I have to assume she means that its brightness is overpowering, because she has her hand in front of her eyes. Rouge gets sent backwards, and Blaze catches her, helpfully breaking her fall. Silver says he can handle it. You better, because you have telekinesis. He somehow thinks reaching towards something full of energy that just hurt Rouge is worth it when he has the ability to affect objects from a distance and was in the habit of using it his entire life. And go figure it electrocutes him. But thankfully, instead of him falling over and being incapable for a while like real electrocution does, he's instantly able to start using telekinesis on it again, meaning it was pointless to write him touching it. He must have collected some rings to heal him up. He thankfully explains that it's growing faster than he can tear it off. He despairs before looking at Blaze and trying again. Then we see Eggman complaining in front of a green projection screen that must be Shadow. I guess he means it's his fault I'm only seeing green here. He says his chaos control made the fake emeralds unstable, and the more he uses them, the bigger they'll get. I have to assume he has no control over whether he's trying to use them or not when he tries to use chaos control, which he would to try to get out of their grip. But he must have been unconscious the whole time, or he'd have instantly warped away from the crystal. He must have only used the crystal once, so it's bad dialogue to have him say, the more he uses them, as if he's used them more than once. Orbot warns him that if the city's infrastructure can't keep up, it'll be dangerous. Eggman says that's what safeguards are for, because he could just reboot the system. He thankfully sees Sonic, Tangle, and the heroes again right away. He asks Metal Sonic what he did, and threatens him with a strict software patch, being too quick to say stuff like that down here. Amy elbows him away as Tails gets in front of him. It really is a shame the artist doesn't show her elbow impacting his torso, and instead draws a lame flash of light like 60s Batman to ruin any appeal the slapstick could have. What makes you think we don't want to see Eggman get hurt? They had a zombie apocalypse in the comic. They aren't restricted very much on what dark stuff they aren't allowed to show. Metal gets free, and Orbot says he left his combat subroutines in his backup drive. And Amy tells Eggman there's no backup for him. Eggman shoots a ray gun that showed no sign of being in the room before to make her drop her hammer. Well, that's competent of him. Now I'm angry at her for somehow not hitting him right away and wasting time talking to him instead. It's so obvious everyone would rather see Amy hit Eggman with the hammer over and over again, that we'd have looked forward to that for the entire series. So Sonic's distracted by concern over Amy, and Metal hits him to make him fall over. Thankfully, Tails smacks Eggman with his tails without having to look at him, and smirks confidently. And Eggman gets worried, saying that without the limiter, there's nothing stopping the emerald's growth. The room they're in starts to tilt. Eggman presses a button on his jacket that normally doesn't look like it's actually supposed to do anything like a computer button. I guess I would have preferred it if he had a button on his shades. The Leaning Tower ends up getting red stuff below it with metal arms connected to them to support it, and unfortunately the story ends there. What is he gonna do? Try to smash the emeralds to death? They'd just grow back to giant size right away. Issue 61. Cubot thinks Eggman's talking about him when he mentions his brilliant creations being able to handle Sonic, even though he always made it clear that he thought Cubot was an idiot, and it's obvious that only Metal Sonic among them could take Sonic. So I don't know why Eggman would say this to mean all of them. And I wouldn't know why Eggman would be referring to the killer robots outside of this room as if they're an immediate threat to them. Sonic gets surrounded by the floating metal things he was actually talking about and gets warped away after he tries to jump at Eggman. Granted, he would have been heading for him at a slower speed than Sonic's speed because Sonic's speed would have killed Eggman on impact. The story tries to add some tension some more, but nothing really happens. And eventually, Eggman grabs Tangle and calls the heroes idiots. Landla then wastes time introducing herself and her team to Eggman, as I'm underwhelmed that they're out of the place they were trapped in with no explanation. Eggman and Metal Sonic especially have plenty of time to go attack her, and they would from her incredibly boring Captain Obvious dialogue. But somehow they stand still so Metal could get hit. Meanwhile, Shadow tells Silver to go away and give up trying to free him because somehow now he's self-sacrificial, when he was nothing but selfish before. And takes a whole page for Silver to get rid of the crystals around him telekinetically. Even though he made it clear last scene that he was just about to try to do that anyways. Just because it's an action series, it takes too long to try to be epic. Tails explains that the city's computer systems being off is what returned Whisper and Landla to normal space. So what took them so long? Why didn't they get returned right after Tails shut down the computers? Landla wants to get out of here and uses a weapon on Glass, and Sonic's instantly back to kick Metal in the face with a hit that's got no impact. Who knows why Sonic escaped the trap faster than they did after being sentenced to it far later. Whisper flies off using the Hover Wisp with Tangle holding her and Landlin holding her tail. Sonic steps on Eggman's weapon at Sonic speed to destroy it. And he tells Eggman he's taken this too far. No, he hasn't. He took things too far by releasing the Metal Virus, and that was a long time ago. Meanwhile, all they did in this little arc was the usual of trying to kill Sonic and his friends. So what's so different about it this time? I could understand Sonic getting tired of fighting Eggman after decades of it. Or at least getting as bored of it as Boom Sonic. But right now he's still addicted to the thrilling adventure of getting to smash his robots, and doesn't want to imagine a life without that. Sonic says Eggman knows what he's gonna do next, and he looks threatening, and if this were any other character than Sonic in any other franchise, he'd mean he's gonna kill him. But instead he takes off in completely the opposite direction. And we see him holding on to Amy with her being held by Tails, who follows Whisper when there's nowhere to land with sharp crystals everywhere. Metal grabs Sonic by the wrist, but the comic makes no attempt to explain how a robot lost his grip on his wrist. It's absolutely effortless for Sonic to get free from him and hit him, telling him to quit. Shadow plans to use Chaos Control, reminding me that Eggman thought him doing that was just giving more power to his city. Eggman says Shadow warped his emeralds, and they get hit with lasers. Shadow tells me he's built his own cage because the emeralds connect his entire city and he's got control of them. Sonic wants to get up there and tells Blaze to give him a boost. And he bounces off a bunch of stuff, and Tails flies Amy up, and that makes her able to hit him away with the hammer to send him high in the air so he could grab Tangle's tail. Eggman says if his city fails, there'll be nothing left to divert power away from the fake Emerald Network. Sonic doesn't believe him for some reason, even though Tails hasn't realized his true potential as a genius. Sonic gets flung ahead and says goodbye to the city, causing an explosion. Shadow tells Silver to go protect the others. Silver assumes Eggman's done from genre blindness, and Shadow says the emeralds are about to explode, taking the city with them. Silver tells his friends to get close and uses telekinesis to protect them as Shadow uses chaos control. And I'm wondering why Silver came home to a happy future earlier, when that was before he was sent back in time again to save them all. The only way there could still be a happy future despite them all being killed is if Eggman was destined to die or otherwise be rendered harmless surprisingly early. Otherwise, it's just not believable that there could have been a happy future without all of them surviving, or most of them, if Eggman's gonna keep being a big threat for decades. The writer probably didn't think through what this would imply when he had Silver be necessary for the heroes' survival again. I assume Shadow's too focused on just the fake emeralds, so he can't warp his friends somewhere else to protect them. Maybe you can't warp separate things to two different places with chaos control. And he only has so much energy, unless the amount of fake emeralds makes that irrelevant. And he didn't think to remove his inhibitor rings just in case because he's an idiot. He never does that, so he never thinks to do that. So the people remaining see some stars in the distance of various different colors, as if they're actually the Chaos Emeralds. Even though I don't know where they scattered to after Sonic went super, and the heroes were inexplicably showing no interest in trying to gather all of them as soon as possible, even though Eggman getting them would be bad news. And they'd be the perfect explanation for why he was able to make a pocket universe. I just hope it'll actually be explained why Eggman didn't get blown up with his city. I'm assuming he went to another dimension, but I didn't see portals anywhere near him. He could have had himself get warped to the place Lamlin was in to protect him. This better not be another situation where literally an issue later he's back. It cuts ahead in time to later, which seems underwhelming after the heroes spent so many issues in the city. Belle was worried the new parts wouldn't connect Wisp power properly, and it worked fine after all. She and Tails have a perfect dynamic. He gets along better with her than any of the girls he was shipped with. And Wave. She says it's mostly whatever she could pull out of the old Chaos drives they had lying around. I wish I knew what their boring conversation was about. The story's more interested in showing you cake. Rouge compliments how it looks, and Amy says she worked hard on it, referencing that she's interested in becoming a good cook, like how she was interested in that Sonic X. She really annoys me by bitching at Rouge for having an Echidna artifact from Eggman's trophy room that he somehow valued enough to put in there, and demanding that she return it to Angel Island just because it came from there. Rouge only cares about jewels and gold, so this ugly looking thing obviously wouldn't appeal to her at all. She would have had a reason to pick it up because treasure is treasure and it's better than guaranteeing it get destroyed with the city. It would have made more sense if she thought Knuckles would value it, and that's the real reason she found it. Cause looking at that thing, it doesn't even look like it would be valuable. How does Amy even recognize that it is an Echidna artifact? It's not like she's an expert in Echidna artifacts. It's not like it's shaped like an Echidna. Amy says she'll have it. I wonder why Eggman even had an Echidna artifact unless he either sent a flying robot or drone to go look in Angel Island. Maybe he found it in the Sonic Free Comic Book Day issue because he certainly didn't have it when he left Angel Island in the shuttle. And I wonder if there's anything magical and evil about this artifact, because it's getting a little more focused than necessary. They wonder where Sonic went, and the story ends with him taking off, with Tails being totally casual about that. Which would only make sense if this means he hates the taste of cake. It reminds me of Sonic X, where Sonic ditched his friends to run all over the place on his own for fun because he's not social at all. But his friends are perfectly fine company, so he's got no reason to find his friends to be mostly annoying in IDW like they are in Sonic X. Amy's the only one he has anything against. Which is why this seems weird to me, as this isn't X Sonic, and Amy didn't do anything to provoke him into leaving. This issue by Evan Stanley is about Tango eventually reuniting with Sonic to tell him what to do, and Tails disabling the safeguards in Eggman City effortlessly in two different rooms. Tango surviving the fall ends up being a bit confusing, because she was falling from a dangerous height with nothing to grab onto with her tail to spin around. All I'm seeing is that the sudden stop should have hurt her. Once again, I'm forced to assume rings protected a character. The only thing to talk about with this issue was that it rubbed it in our face that Sonic characters are supposed to be immune to fall damage for no reason. Even rubble falling on them isn't lethal. Tobor survived being buried under rubble for a day. So this issue, by Evan Stanley, had Shadow wake up and take control of the fake emeralds to trap Eggman with them. And Tango flung Sonic towards something, and he said goodbye to Eggman City, with Silver protecting all of his friends. This was after Lanolin and Whisper escaped from the place they were trapped in without us even getting to see all of it like I was looking forward to, because the city's computer systems were turned off. And who knows what the delay was all about. The whole story was going for tension with the heroes being in danger, so it was trying to be exciting, with Tangle being afraid of losing more of her friends. So I guess I could understand thinking it's a good story for an action series. It's too bad Sonic's attack against Metal Sonic had no impact, and Eggman didn't get a bunch of satisfying cartoon slapstick after everything. And I'm forced to assume the place Lanolin was trapped in was just a boring, gray, tiny room, with no one else but her friends in it. So those were the big disappointments of the issue. I felt bored and underwhelmed by the end. Like, really? Was that really it? I wanted to yawn. I guess it was an alright story. It's just disappointing as a satisfying conclusion to an arc about them being in the city so long. Because it expects just the fact that Shadow used a lot of his power to make it epic and amazing on his own, even though it was to be expected that he'd use the emeralds. And Eggman never got hit once. I don't understand why the comic's opposed to having the main villains get a lot of slapstick. Everyone knows it's satisfying to have karma happen to the bad guys instead of them being karma Houdinis nearly every time. It all builds up to nothing here. The city gets destroyed, but it's pretty safe to assume Eggman's not only going to survive, but make another city. So this is meaningless. Also, if you assume that Surge thinks Sonic died, then would she move on to trying to destroy Eggman's robots just out of spite, after she fails to find any of Sonic's friends to move on to because they're all in Eggman City? I was kinda expecting to see Surge and Kid at the very end, because it was just after a big arc involving them, so that's another reason this felt underwhelming, because it ended up feeling like just a filler arc, with nothing to do with anything that came before it. Of course, it would have been a pain in the ass for Sonic, but it wouldn't be so bad if, they never ran into him. It's a big city after all. But I guess then there would only be one worthwhile scene with them.